Good morning. We're glad that you joined us here this morning.
Hello, everybody.
What have you ever been around a sore loser?
Is that counting me?
Yeah, I mean, are you a sore loser?
I don't like losing.
Okay. I can be a sore loser at times. We've all probably been around a sore loser or seen how a sore loser reacts. And the definition is it's just a person who becomes very upset or very angry when he or she loses a game or things don't go the way they exactly want to. And throughout life, we've probably seen that take place. You've probably seen somebody do something crazy after things not going their way, or maybe they've even said something or done something that's been kind of crazy. I remember my first experience with a sore loser. I was in 4th grade. I was playing on a travel basketball team. We were over at Muskingum College. I'll never forget this. We're playing when we're up by 20 points, so that means I was in the game. So we're playing, and I think I made a shot, and this kid that was guarding me, I'll never forget this kid's face. He had a blue Gatorade mustache, and his hair spiked, and he looked at me, and he said, "Your mom's ugly." And being a 4th grade, I was like, "What?" I said, "What did you say?" And he said, "Your mom's ugly." And I just started crying. Right there on the basketball court, I just started crying. And the coach took me out, and he's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, he told me my mom was ugly. And he sat me down, and he's like, "Listen, we're up by 20. He's being a sore loser. He's trying to get in your head." And I remember my mom coming over, and she's like, "What are you crying about?" And I was like, "Well, he said you were ugly." She's like, "Josh, he doesn't even know who I am." But that was probably my first experience, like really recognizing what a sore loser is and what they do. But throughout life and throughout history, we've seen some pretty big sore losers. One of them, I had to go this direction. My favorite movie, as I've said plenty of times, is Toy Story. But if you watch the first Toy Story, Woody is, Woody is a sore loser in the sense of when Buzz comes into the picture, he's no longer the favorite. It's no longer going the way that he wants it to go. And ultimately, he reacts in a way to try to push Buzz out the window, and that's why we have the whole movie of Toy Story. So he was kind of a sore loser. Another example is this. You may remember this one. This was a few years ago. Taylor Swift wins an award. Some people thought Beyonce should have won it because she had one of the greatest videos of all time. So Kanye kind of takes the mic and says a few things because it didn't go the way that he thought it should go. And so there's another example. And then a few years before that, there was an incident with Faith Hill. I think it was Carrie Underwood.
Right.
She won an award. They had all of the who is it? What are they called? All the people that potentially nominees. Yeah, there we go. All the nominees were on one picture frame. You could see them all. And they announced it's Carrie Underwood, and you just kind of see Faith Hill like scream, "No, why?" And it kind of got some mixed reviews. Some people thought she was just joking. Some people thought she was serious. But all of those different things. And then there's one last one, the movie Happy Gilmore. With Adam Sandler, there's a guy by the name of Shooter McGavin. He's supposed to win the tournament. Happy Gilmore wins the tournament. And then there's the scene where he takes the jacket and tries to run away with it. And so the past few weeks, we've been talking about the battles that we're in and how the fight is real. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about the battle with the flesh and how the flesh has the desires to take the easy way out. It wants to focus on your body, your ego, and your own desires, not the desires of God. And so a couple weeks ago, we spent some time talking about that pull and that fight that we have against the flesh. And then last week, we took some time and talked about the fight that we have against the world. And we talked about, it's two different sets of beliefs, the world's beliefs and then, the God's beliefs. And so we spent some time talking about that. And so this week, we're going to finish this up. I guess we're in round 3 here.
Right.
And we're going to finish this up and talk about the fight with Satan. And the whole reason for the sore loser thing is Satan is a sore loser. And so Woody's going to kind of introduce us to that.
Satan is the ultimate sore loser. And we're going to look at a passage in a book. We don't spend a whole lot looking at the book of Revelation. Revelation is a book of victory. It's a book that's scary and comforting at the same time. It's a book of conflict and triumph for God and His church. And in chapters 13 through 17, that's really the part of Revelation where it talks about the beast and all of the bad things that's going to happen to believers. But in chapters 10 through 12, and then chapters 18 through the end of the book, sandwiched in between there, the theme of those chapters is sort of, you know what, it's going to be bad, but God wins, and God's people wins. And I don't know about you. You're a guy that tapes. Are you a guy that tapes the game if you've got your team playing and you don't want to know the score to watch it later?
Kind of, sometimes.
Kind of.
Depends what game it is.
Ethan, are you the guy that wants to know the score, or you don't want to know it until you watch it?
I just watch the highlights.
You just watch the highlights. You don't have time to watch the game. I'm the guy that tapes the game of my team, and if my team loses, I delete it. If they win,
you delete
I'll
a lot
watch
of
it.
games.
I do. Oh.
It's a big week this week.
Well, Cleveland, Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because why do I need to watch it if my team's going to lose? But if I know they win, I'll watch it. I can relax and just enjoy the game and not have to sweat it out because my team wins. Well, that's sort of what Revelation 12 is. Chapter 12 is God, through John, revealing to his people, you know what? You're going to win. And it gives us readers comfort. Now, the three main characters in chapter 12 is a pregnant woman, a baby, and a seven-headed red dragon. Those are the three main characters. That sounds like a Harry Potter.
Sounds like a pretty crazy movie.
Yeah, it does. And we're not going to get into a detailed discussion of what it all is, but the woman is God's people. It represents God's people, Israel, the church. It tells us that the dragon is the devil. It is Satan. In verse 9, it tells us that. In verse 5, it talks about the baby being Jesus because it's someone who is going to rule the world. And you read the passage, and I would encourage you to do it. In verses 7 through 9, there's this war in heaven. John sees a vision of this war in heaven, the spiritual battle. It seems clear that this battle took place on the cross because we'll look at a verse later. It sort of does that. But the whole point is there's this battle in heaven, and this angel's fighting Satan, and Satan loses, and him and his angels are cast down in this vision to the earth. In verses 13, 14, 15, and 16, although Satan can't win, the vision is that Satan goes to earth and he starts persecuting this woman. He starts persecuting the church. But you read the passage and God protects the church. And it talks about Satan spewing water and how the earth swallows it and God protects the church. And so you have all of this going on. And then in verse 17, it says this, and this is what we want to make. It says at the end of chapter 12, verse 17, it says, then the dragon was enraged at the woman, Satan was enraged at God's people, and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring. Well, who are offspring? He tells us those who obey God's commands and hold to the testimony. So Satan fought Jesus and lost on the cross. And when Jesus rose from the grave, Satan lost. And then Satan tried to destroy his people, the church, and lost. And so now in verse 17 it says Satan even is going to attack the individual Christian. But he loses. Even if he kills the individual Christian, the Christian wins because Jesus rose from the grave and delivered us from death. There is no way Satan can win. And that's the whole point of Revelation chapter 12. Sure, we're in a battle. Things are going to get tough. There's going to be difficult times. Satan's going to be out there and try to trip us up, but there's no way he can win unless we quit. So we are in a fight, but we're victorious in Christ. And we've said a couple of times the past couple of weeks, the fight is real. Mm-hmm. The fight against the flesh, the world, and the devil's real. But the victory is real. And so we just need to be aware that we're in a fight. But we need to understand Satan's already lost. He's still trying to destroy us, but he's already lost. And because he's trying to destroy us, we need to know his battle plan.
Right. And throughout Scripture, it kind of lays out the way that Satan is going to try to use this battle plan against you. And the first thing he tries to do is slander. Mm-hmm. And in Revelation chapter 12, verse 10, it says he is the accuser. He is going to use slander. The definition of slander is just making false statements to damage someone's reputation or saying hurtful and damaging statements. Going back to that kid in 4th grade, trying to tell me my mom was ugly. He was just trying to make me hurt. But Satan does the same thing. And he tries to hurt God and he tries to hurt us as human beings. And we see in Genesis during the fall, he called out to Eve and said, God just doesn't want you to know everything. He just doesn't want you to have that power. And so he slanders in that way. But he also slanders towards us as humans. He's the guy that puts the thoughts in our heads that you're not good enough. There's no way God can use you. You've made too many mistakes. It's all of those things just trying to break you down and make you feel like these hurtful things about yourself.
Yeah, in fact, in Revelation 12, verse 10, he says that he is the accuser of the brethren. He's going to accuse us. You're no good. You're terrible. And similar to that, second thing in the battle plan is he lies. In John chapter 8, Jesus is talking to some of the Pharisees who don't believe in him, and he calls them, I mean, Jesus gets pretty in their face. He calls them, you're like your father, the devil. You're a liar. And then he says that Satan, or the devil, is the father of all lies. And lying and slander can be synonymous. And like you said, back in the fall in Genesis 3, Satan's first attack against Eve in the garden was a lie. When Eve said, well, you know, God said if we eat of this tree in the middle of the garden, we'll die. Satan lied. You will not die. It won't hurt you. Go ahead. It's no big deal. And in fact, as you referenced, he says, God doesn't want you to be able to determine right from wrong. Right. God doesn't. And in all of human history, humankind wants to determine right from wrong. We don't want God to tell us. And so that was the whole deal there. And so Satan uses those lies, and he does the same thing today. Go ahead. No one will know. It'll make you happy. You can quit any time. It won't hurt. It's no big deal when he tries to tempt us to get involved in some situation, relationship, or habit that can destroy us. The best way to combat a lie is to know the truth. And so that's why we need to be students of the Word, because whenever Satan lies, I can say, no, here's the truth. But that's part of his battle plan.
Yeah. And another step of this, of kind of his plan, is he has schemes. In Ephesians chapter 6, it tells us to put on the armor to be ready to stand against the devil's schemes. Because a scheme is simply a plan or an arrangement to try to obtain a certain object or put an idea into effect. So it's almost a plan within a plan. And so Satan has different ways that he does that. He tries to make us doubt. He makes us try to doubt God and what God's doing, makes us doubt ourselves. He uses discouragement, makes us not feel good about ourselves or feel like we're not good enough. He has a way of diversion and making things that are hurtful or not good look good. In different ways like that, and he uses defeat. He uses this idea of shame and guilt and doubt to make you feel like a failure, so you don't even want to try. And so he has all of these different schemes and plans to try to make us feel certain ways.
Yeah, and then another part of his battle plan is he deceives. 2 Corinthians, Paul says that Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. He disguises himself as someone good. One of the things about wearing all these face masks now is it's hard to tell if someone's a friend or a stranger. I was at the doctor's office later this week and walked in and I saw somebody and I thought, he looks familiar, but I could only see him from here up. Well, it was one of our elders. And I'm thinking, he said, hey, Woody. And I said, who are you? It was just hard to see. You've read about people that disguise themselves as police officers and are really crooks. Right. They dress up like somebody good only to deceive somebody. And sometimes what we think we see and think is truth is not. And Satan's good at saying, hey, I'm here to benefit you. And he disguises himself up as somebody that wants to help us, but he really wants to destroy us. And it's sometimes we don't see what something really is. I got some examples for you, okay? Can we zoom that out a little bit? What is that?
It looks like some French fries
Yeah.
and eggs.
Yep. It's peaches and yogurt and apple slices.
I didn't know that.
Even
when you sent me that, I was like, I don't know what he's going with this.
Peaches, yogurt, and apple slices. Let's look at the next one. This guy said, look, my wife's a centaur, half animal, half whatever in Greek mythology. But really, it's the dog. And he's got the dog, but don't she look like she's got some hind legs and everything? Yeah. But you look at that. And then I saw this on Facebook the other day, and a friend of mine said, man, look at that. That's somebody on the beach. That's sweet. Man, I wished I was there. And then here's what the next picture was. That's what it was. 2 hot dogs on a plate in front of the screensaver. I mean, it didn't look like what I thought at all. Yeah. And Satan's a master of making us think we're looking at something and we're really not. He disguises himself as an angel of light and says, I really want to help you. This is what's best for you. He makes sin look good. If sin didn't look good, nobody'd want to do it. Right. He says, man, if you just get mad at that person and get angry and hold a grudge and get even with them, that you'll feel good. No, you won't. That's what you need to do. He wants us to think he knows what's best for us. But it leads to more destruction. His way leads to our relationships being destroyed. It leads to addiction. It leads to more bitterness. And so we need to understand that he is a deceiver.
Right. And the last part of his battle plan is this. He prowls. He is always on the move, stealthily looking and searching for his prey. You've seen a lion before. We can throw this picture up. You've seen a lion before on the prowl, right? As he's moving quietly amongst the grass to find and
that
search.
Looks more dangerous than the liger you had up last week
That's
from Napoleon Dynamite.
That's a little more intense. But the way the lion works is he moves quietly and in search of his prey. He doesn't want anybody to know he's around. He's going to move kind of slowly, but once he sees it, he's going to attack pretty quickly. And so in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, it tells us to be alert and of sober mind, that your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And so it's this idea of understanding as part of Satan's plan. He's always working, and sometimes we're not going to know he's there, but he's looking to devour us. And I think if we keep that in mind, it's going to help us keep alert, and we'll get to that in a few minutes.
Yeah, so let's look at the secret. How do we fight Satan? And this is going to sound crazy. The secret to winning against your fight against Satan is don't fight. Don't fight, because Jesus has already won the battle for you. So, and He's out to destroy you. So why fight? And you referenced the 1 Peter 5 passage, and let's throw that passage up there. 1 Peter is written to persecuted Christians, encouraging them to stay strong. These are Christians. If you read the first part of the letter, Peter's writing to Christians that have been scattered. They're leaving. They're being chased away from their home because they're being persecuted and sometimes killed for their faith. And he reminds them that even though you're being persecuted, you still need to be holy. And he talks about you still need to stay strong, and you still need to love each other, and you still glorify the Father during this persecution or during this trial or during this pandemic that we're going through. As Christians, we still are to be holy and to love each other and do all these things. And then in the end of the letter in chapter 5, Peter reminds them that there's a spiritual battle going on, that this persecution's going on because of Satan's behind it. He's out trying to destroy you. There is a spiritual war. And so he tells them to stay humble and give God their cares, cast all your cares on them. And then he tells them how to fight Satan. And it's interesting to see what he doesn't say. He says, you fight, but he doesn't say you fight by fighting. Here's what he tells us to say in this passage.
Yeah, he tells us a couple different things, but the first one is this. It's this idea of pay attention. Mm-hmm. How many times have you ever heard that in your life?
Oh, all the time.
Someone yelling or screaming and saying, pay attention.
All
right?
the time.
You've heard it from mom and dad.
My wife.
Your wife. You may have heard it from the passenger in your car when you're driving. Pay attention. But people are wanting you to pay attention to the things that are going on around you. They're wanting you to take notice to the things that are going on around you. I learned something this week. The attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds.
It's got me beat by 2 seconds.
1.
Oh.
The human attention span, I don't know how they did this study, but right now they say the human attention span is 8 seconds.
What?
Right.
Okay.
Right. So a goldfish's attention span is longer than ours. So that tells me we got to do a better job of paying attention. Because already 8 seconds has passed and you're already starting to think about this. You can go to the next slide. You went from goldfish to now you're thinking you're kind of hungry and you wish that you could have those goldfish. But Peter, I think, tells us here in the first part of this fight with Satan is that, listen, as human beings, you have to pay attention. Here's the deal. There's danger out there. Satan is prowling around. And when you sense danger, usually you pay more attention, right? I remember being a kid, if you heard a noise in the house, you started really you tried to figure out where it was coming from. You were going to pay attention, make sure you didn't see anything moving. I think that's what Peter's getting at here. He's like, listen, in this battle with Satan, always be alert. Be of sober mind, be of sound mind, and be ready because Satan is working, and just pay attention to all that's going on around you.
Okay. And then secondly, he tells us to resist. He doesn't say to fight, but he tells resist him. How? By standing firm in the faith. Why? Because you know that there's other believers going through the same thing. And I want us to go back to Revelation 12, and you can see a little bit about how we can resist Satan. In Revelation 12, it talks about in verse 11 that the brothers that Satan accused overcame Satan, and they did three things. First, I resist by pointing to the blood. And so he talks about that. Point to the blood. You know, when Satan comes up and says, you're a loser, so no, I'm a winner. I have victory through Jesus. I'm forgiven. I'm saved. When Satan says God doesn't love you, you point to the blood on the cross and say, oh, yes, he does love me. There's Jesus on the cross. When Satan says you're not good enough, you point to the cross and say, yes, I am good enough. Look, Jesus died for me. When Satan says God won't forgive you again, you point to the cross. The way to resist Satan is every time he tries to get you to give in to temptation, you point to the blood. And then you share the story. It says in Revelation 12:11, they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. Well, every time I share my story, every time I share the gospel, which is Jesus died on the cross and rose from the dead through my sins, drives Satan nuts. Satan hates the fact that it reminds him. I don't like to be reminded of my worst defeat. Right. And every time I hear, Satan hears that Jesus saved someone, it drives him crazy, drives him nuts. And the more I tell people about the testimony about what Jesus has done in my life, the more Satan loses. And so I need to do that. And then he tells us that we resist him by being faithful unto death. And it talks about that they overcame him by pointing to the blood, by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. When I face Satan and say, Satan, even if you kill me, I'm going to stay strong. When we have the spirit of a martyr, Satan can't win. And, we'd be willing to die. When we're willing to die for Christ, if called upon, because we know we win, then there's no way Satan can do anything. That's the ultimate self-denial, is knowing that. And to a Christian, listen, death is an overrated thing because Jesus gave us the victory through the cross. So how do I resist Satan? I point to the blood whenever he starts tempting me, playing in my mind. I share the story because he doesn't like to be around to hear that story. And I decide I'm going to be faithful to the point of death. I have the spirit of a martyr and say, Satan, no matter what you do to me, I'm going to win. Even if you kill me, I win.
Right. And the third part of this is trusting God's sustaining grace. In verses 10 through 11, it ends with this. It says, and the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you, make you strong, firm, and steadfast. To him the power forever and ever. I was thinking about the word grace this week, and I texted my wife, who's smarter than me, and I said, what do you think of the word grace? And she said, well, I'm reading this book called Boy Mom, and she sent me a couple quotes from this book about grace, and so I want to share those with you in just a second. So the first one is this: grace does not overlook wrongdoing. Rather, it deals with error in an environment of love and support. Mm-hmm. And then this is the one I really wanted to focus on. It says grace means that after dealing with an offense, we have forgiveness and then move on rather than replaying the mistake over and over again. And so I think what we read here at the end of this is Peter saying, listen, you're going to suffer and you're going to battle and you're going to have struggles, but God has given you grace. There's this sustaining grace that's behind you. And if you don't focus on all of the mistakes you made and you focus on God's sustaining grace, you're going to be able to make a stand against Satan in this battle. You're going to be able to withstand the attacks of Satan. You're going to be able to resist, in a sense. Not depending on your own strength, but depending on the grace and the love that God gives you. And so those are the three ways that we can help win this battle. And this morning, we're going to listen to a song called It Is Well With My Soul. And in life, you're going to go through struggles, and Satan's going to attack you in different ways. But because of God's grace and God's love, you can sing, It Is Well With My Soul. Right. We'll see you next week.
Have a great week.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrow was when